Hello, hello, hello. Today we move forward in GCSE Economics and we're looking at spending, saving and borrowing. Let's get into it. So, keywords you're going to need for this part. We've got spending. We should all know what that is, right? You're paying out your money. You can hire goods or you can buy things directly. You can use a credit card and pay on credit. Saving. Every time we get money in the form of salary, we've got two choices. Do we spend or save? As we're going to look at later, some places like China love to save, and other places like America love to spend more than they actually get. Borrowing, putting those pennies on an IOU. And then we finally have disposable income. This is after you get your money from your job, they take away all the taxes. How much money do you have left? That's your disposable income. All right, moving forward. Spending then. So like I said, people divide the money that they get between spending and saving. And generally the idea is the more money that you receive in your paycheck, the more you're going to spend. And what you spend your money on is based on utility, which is basically another word for enjoyment. So I've got a choice between three activities: surfing, skiing and fishing. If I enjoy fishing more, that's what I'm going to spend my money on. It's that simple, really. So we're going to look at what determines how much we spend, all right? You can have a think about that. And the original determination of how much we spend is a calculation, okay? It's basically the averages in society. It's called marginal propensity to consume. Remember what I said before about spending and saving? Well, I give you more money, marginal. How much of that are you going to spend and how much of that are you going to save? An example would be if I get a pay rise of $1,000 and I spend 800 of that, my marginal propensity to consume is 80% or 0.8. Based on this, you can understand also that my marginal propensity to save is going to be 20% or 0.2. That's the money that I haven't spent, right? So MPS plus MPC equals 1, basically. And the interesting thing is this is different in every country. So which countries do you think have the highest and lowest MPC? It's quite interesting, this. So culturally, the US, for every extra dollar a person gets over there, they spend 85% of it. Wild. But look at India, China, Japan. These guys love to save money. It's something embedded culturally. It's really interesting, really fascinating. And it doesn't always correlate with development. Japan's very developed. It's got a high GDP per capita, yet they tend to save more than other countries. All right, moving forward. Next is interest rates. If the Bank of England say the interest rates are now lower, that means when I borrow money, I have less money to pay back. So if I have less money to pay back, I've got more disposable income, meaning I will spend more in society. Even if my MPC stays the same, my marginal propensity to consume, even if that stays the same, I'll still spend more and I'll still borrow more. Consumer confidence. How confident are you about the future? If you're super confident about the future, you'll definitely spend more. If you see all your friends losing jobs and you know there's an impending recession, you'll probably spend less and save because you're worried. Next is household wealth. What if you own a property, it was worth $200,000, and then in 10 years it's now worth $400,000? You are going to feel wealthier. You're going to feel great. You're going to have more confidence to buy more goods and services. And next, the supply of credit. How good are banks in your country? How easily available is it to get access to loans? In some countries, it's a lot easier than others. And in some countries, they have to use loan sharks, which charge massively high percentages. But the supply of credit is readily available. So in general then, poorer families tend to have a higher MPC. That's simply because they have less money. And a higher percentage of that has to go on the basics. Petrol for a car, food in the supermarkets. And the government tends to redistribute money to those poorer in society. In the UK at least. So this is quite an interesting graph. Can you pause the video, take a look and try and understand it? It basically shows that as income has increased, the spending proportionally has increased at a very similar rate. Meaning that MPC has remained quite consistent. Showing statistically that as people's wealth increases, so does their spending. So we use this as kind of a factual underpinning in economics based on the data. So we know there's a relationship between increases in income and consumer spending. But the real question is, what makes our spending patterns differ from person to person? There's lots of reasons. Can you think of any? This is income. High income means you'll spend more. Next is gender. Females and males have completely different spending habits in society. Wealth, like we said about that house. The higher the value, the more comfortable you are spending. Lifestyle. What if you play an expensive sport? What if you like skiing? Sometimes people put all their money into their sport and have nothing left at the end of it. But other sports are free, like breakdancing. Age. Throughout your life, you're going to invest in different things at different times. When you're younger, you might invest in extreme sports. And when you're older, you might invest in a nice ping pong paddle. I love me some ping pong. Culture. What about festivals, events, work culture, buying suits, all those kind of things? It's different in every part of the land. Tastes. Your individual taste might be different to others, and family circumstances. You might have to help out your parents now and again, or they might have to help you out. So, next question is then, why do we overspend? Why do some people, like in America, spend more money than they have? Let's watch this quick video.
Great to see you again.
So, Charlie, people know they need to make and stick to a budget, make sure their expenses match their incomes. They know all this. So why are so many people still busting their budgets?
Well, one of the main findings of this article is that people have sort of psychological blind spots when it comes to thinking about their finances and their future. So even if they're very smart people, even if they intellectually understand what it means to have, a personal balance sheet, to avoid debt, to maintain savings, they still have these sort of subconscious desires or understandings about finance that if not...
Have a look at this. 66,877 pre-tax. 53,495 average annual expenditure. If this is pre-tax, this pretty much means they're spending exactly what they're earning. Wild. It looks like it's even higher than the 0.85 that we looked at. It looks like their average propensity to consume is almost 100% if you include the taxation.
Check can send them down the wrong path.
And we do see that people spend almost as much as they bring in pre-tax income when you look
That's right.
Which means not much is getting put away.
That's right. That's unfortunate.
So, Charlie, let's talk about what we all need to keep in mind. And I think that one of the main things you talk about is that a lot of people don't give their future expenses enough weight. Is that correct?
That's right. So one researcher out of the University of Colorado at Boulder found that people are really good about thinking about how their incomes are going to rise in the future, but they're really bad about thinking about how their expenses are going to rise along with them. And what he found is that as people grow wealthier, their expenses actually grow as well. And so this is how people sort of end up getting richer, but still buying that house they ultimately can't afford, that car that they ultimately can't afford. So his takeaway here is to know when you're making a purchase or a big financial decision, know that you might be ignoring the expenses, that in your mind you might have sort of a tendency to do that, and create a very strict budget and stick to it.
All right, and the next one might seem a little backward, but we shouldn't use credit to pay for an emergency if we have the savings, right? Charlie, we should pull out of savings first.
That's right. So an academic that I spoke with at the University of Chicago Booth School of Business was a little bit concerned about this idea about savings in the United States. So there's this general understanding that Americans don't save enough, and that's true, but her worry was that people actually might be being a little bit too simplistic about this and doing, financially irresponsible things in order to maintain those savings, even if they already had an emergency fund. And so what she sort of noticed is that people were willing to spend, on credit cards at expensive interest rates just to maintain extra savings and feel financially responsible. So the takeaway there is really, if you need to make a purchase, think about where the money is coming from. Feel okay if you've got an emergency fund, taking some out of your savings as long as you're going to replenish it later on.
Very, very good advice. And then, of course, don't get into that mindset of spending to reward yourself.
Right. So a couple of researchers from Stanford and the University of Zurich had found that people sort of think about willpower in two different ways. So there are people who think that willpower is something that's sort of unlimited, something that they can tap again and again, and people who think that willpower is finite. And those people who think that willpower is finite, after exerting themselves, feel like they should reward themselves and tend to reward themselves with overspending. And so one recommendation from an academic I talked to was, if you've had a stressful day, if you've been at work and you feel like you've really exerted that willpower, don't put yourself in a situation where you feel like you're going to be tempted to spend. Go to a yoga class, schedule a workout instead of, going to the mall.
All right, so looking at this video, the financial advisor has quite a bit of advice for us. So his first general advice is basically don't make poor decisions. Unbelievable that people have savings in a bank account, yet they're buying on credit, which they have to pay interest on to pay back later when they could just use their savings to buy these goods and services. It's like a false pretense that they actually have money. It's strange. So, some problems where people who anticipate higher salaries in the future spend more now. Risky, very risky strategy. Also, as people get wealthier, they buy nicer cars, move into nicer houses, and the lifestyle creep kicks in. So their average costs go up substantially. And it's clear that people simply don't manage their finances well, as we just said. And after work, don't go online shopping. Reward yourself in different ways if you're feeling stressed. But as we know, expenditure is based on everyone's utility. Every person is different. Their MPC is different. And money management is a super important skill that I think should be taught at a very young age. So, next question then. What spending patterns do you think have changed in Thailand in the last 30 years in terms of what people are buying and using on a daily basis? Well, we know people are living longer, so they're going to buy medical stuff. They have more leisure time, so they're going to be investing in sports and activities. They're more health conscious, so think about the things they buy in stores like yogurt drinks and stuff in the 7-Eleven. There's increasing concern for the environment, yet people are still burning farms in the north, aren't they? More females have joined the labour force, so they're earning more money and therefore spending more and then controlling what businesses produce. And the new technologies, modern tech, it's created a whole bunch of new wants, like having computers at home. So next then, we have saving. Look at this graph. There is one big spike on this savings graph, isn't there? This savings ratio, the percentage of money saved based on income. Look at this massive spike, 28%, 2019. We all know what happened in 2019, don't we? COVID shook the world and it lowered consumer confidence and it led to people saving more being at home. Also, yeah, people couldn't go out, so of course they're going to save more. Right, moving on. So here's a scenario for you. John saves 20% of his salary and Sarah struggles to save even 5%. What could be the reasons behind this? So, I mean, there's a lot of individual circumstances that we looked at with spending, like gender, hobbies, lifestyle that could lead to this. But in general, what we need to look at is the main factors affecting differences in savings between people. And it's very similar to spending, really. So we have our high interest rates. If the bank give you 8% a year cash, you're going to want to save more. The opportunity cost of not putting it in the bank gets higher. Disposable income. Again, this determines how much you spend and how much you save. The more you have, the more you save. Rate of inflation. With high inflation, you might have to spend more and save less because you've got no choice, especially if things like potatoes and rice go up in price. What about future purchases on a house? People in the UK love to save up for a house, just like in China. Sadly, though, a lot of young people are being priced out of the market and they just give up on saving. Also, some people are worried about the future, so they take precautionary measures for a rainy day. Next, we have consumer confidence. How confident are you in your job and how confident are you in your future? If you're confident, you'll save less. If you're unconfident, you'll save more. I always keep a little nest egg just in case anything happens. I've never had to use it yet, but just in case. Right, exam question time. So pause the video and try and answer this. This is a real exam question. Discuss whether or not a government should encourage people to save more. So with this being a discussion question in GCSE economics, we know we have to look at both sides. Okay. And this is an older question, so there's very little evaluation required. So on both sides, firstly, we're going to say, yeah, they should encourage people to save more. What reasons can you think of? Well, if people save more, the bank has more access to funds, and these funds can be used to loan money out. That can lower interest rates and help the economy. And by helping the economy with investment, it can lead to growth in living standards. What if the government have a saving scheme that people can put their money into? That can also fuel growth and development in society. Also, if inflation is crazy in the economy, reducing spending of people will lead to less demand for products, which will lead to a reduction in inflation. Also, this might improve the current account where people are spending less abroad, they're spending less domestically and also abroad. But the easiest one that most students get is this last one here. It's really good to help for emergencies. It's good to help for retirement. What if you're unemployed? It helps the government because they don't need to provide the money for pensions. Okay, so this is all the different ways to get marks for this question, up to 3 marks for this side. Now we need to look at the other side. So there's reasons why they shouldn't encourage people to save more. And one of the biggest ones is we need to facilitate demand in the economy. We need people to buy stuff to support businesses, don't we? So more savings might reduce output in companies. Unemployment might increase if they're not selling their products or not having enough customers. And it can cause deflation if there's not enough spending at all. And with all that extra money in banks, like I said, it could be good where businesses borrow more. But what if the bank decide to loan to customers that have poor credit checks? Think about what happened in America with the subprime crisis. They just lent money to anybody who wanted a house, even if they had bad credit. So many people didn't pay back, and then it led to a massive crash in the market. All right, that's it from me about spending and saving. If you need any resources or private lessons, just click the link down below, and I'll see you again.